You're listening to Everything You Think You Know Is Wrong. My goal is to help individuals like you explore various ways to fully transform your life from the inside out. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Everything You Think You Know Is Wrong. I'm really excited for today's guest. Her name is April Nemeth. She's an American designer with a special interest in conscious and ethical business, creating strategy, design, and production across all platforms. She specializes in brand identities, campaigns, social strategy, content creation, commercials, websites, apps, new product development, environment styling, interiors, and more. She's also a yoga teacher and a woman with a mind of her own. Get ready for an awesome podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back to Everything You Think You Know Is Wrong. Today's guest is April Nemeth. She is amazing. Let's start with that. She's an artist, a designer, a yoga teacher, and a very, very smart girl. April, thanks. Thanks for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
We were talking before we started, and I always knew you were really deep and really, really intelligent and intuitive, but you have some really great ideas in your mind, especially about what's happening right now in the world from a spiritual standpoint, which is what I care about.
Yeah.
You know, so we were just talking about, I wish we would have recorded it, but like the predictions that something like this would happen to actually help transform the globe, which I believe is what's happening right now. It's a massive transformation that seems to be blowing through, every country. Every person is feeling this. It's not like any of us are alone in this. It's the collective.
Right. No, I definitely feel that too. I think that it's a hard topic because some people are right now really scared. So to say like, this is everything is here to help us at this point in time when people are, collectively, in my opinion, going through a giant ego death in a way, as a whole. I think that's a really intense thing to hear. Like, oh, it's here to help you. Like you're losing everything. You're being stripped away of every sort of conditioning and all of the things that you might have relied on that might have not been the best thing for you are now taken away. All the things that you go to kind of distract and be sleepwalking or, not have the awakened state of mind with intention. They're gone. And it can be devastating to go through. It is devastating to go through something like that. And I'm being as, sort of compassionate as I can in just remembering that, oh my gosh, okay, these are people now at home who they've never been with themselves ever, right? Like they're just meeting themselves for the first time now. And some are meeting their shadow, some are meeting some really great things about themselves, and some are just sitting with their anxiety around like, oh my gosh, this thing that I used for so long is not here. It's not available for me to numb, and
right.
So I don't know, I totally agree with you. And I'm trying to be as sensitive as I can to anyone I talk to, because like, I know everyone's going through their own cycle. It's like the hero's journey or the hero, the ego death.
But it's actually comforting for people to hear conversations like this, because at least then there's some like knowledge connected to what's going on, and it gives you a new perspective. So you can start thinking like, wait a second, maybe in a way this is a good thing. It's not all doom and gloom, because then you get stuck in like a really bad spiral. It's just another perspective. And for me, it makes me feel like, okay, there is a light at the end of this road. No, it's not. Through my own experience, it's the pain that sitting with yourself and having to deal with who you really are. That's what breaks you open. That's what allows massive radical change and transformation to enter into your life. It's just odd that it's happening all at once. That's the intensity. It's like, not only is it happening to you and I, but like you can feel it from everyone.
Totally. Yeah. It's like someone put it the other day, like having everyone go through a very traumatic event everyone that you know going through the same traumatic event at the same time. Like,
Right.
that's a global trauma. That's pretty incredible. Like, I'm sad. There's a lot of really bad things happening too, but I'm sad, but I'm also sort of like, all right, like now is the time that we can collectively go and make this transformation.
When I look backwards on my life, I have lost a lot of family members and lots of time being in hospitals, really intense moments. But of course, I'd like to have my family members back and my mom, my brother alive and all that. But when I
Yeah.
look backwards, like I accept it all because it transformed me. I know it's part of the bigger plan, and I accept it. I accept the good and the
Yes.
bad because I know there's a rhyme and reason to it all, and that's like that sets you free.
Totally. And I don't know if the movies do it or like what happens, but there's many people under the assumption that like we get out of this thing alive. Like it's life is full of the light and the dark, the life and death. Like,
Of course.
it's part of this life here. And so there are going to be these waves. Everyone's like, oh, I just wish I could be happy. And I'm like, well, we can't have that without the other stuff. It's just part of how it works. And ride the wave when it's a good time, because there's going to be another time that comes that's just
100%. It's
Yeah.
not, it'll never stop, right? Like there's good times, there's bad times. And exactly like you said, ride the wave. If you can, it takes practice, it takes time, it takes being connected to who you really are as a person, meditation, yoga, stuff like that really brings you inward. And then you are able to handle things in your life that you never dreamt in a million years you could handle.
Yeah, totally. And I think that I don't know, like you said, the pain, and like it just doesn't I have transformed through just uncomfort, right? Like differences, and it just things shifting in my life, like in a big way, like, and having more growth. But you kind of have to have, like, just like you said, the trust to that everything is here to help you.
Right.
Everything is here to help you, and if you don't know that, even the hard things are going to be like, why did God do this to me? Or why is this happening to me? That's like,
and that's a bad place to be. That's a bad place to be psychologically, spiritually, because then you're playing that loop over in your mind. Why did that happen? Why did that person get cancer? Why did they die? Well, there is a big picture here, and you can eventually see it, but you might be dragged through hell to get there
for years.
For years. I mean, it sometimes, like, I look backwards and I'm like, oh my God, how did I make it? Like, how did I do that? But you come out so strong. And then for me, I think the positive is you can then help other people. I mean, we all really are walking each other home, like Ram Dass said. Like, that's a true statement. We have experiences, we learn, we grow, we help others because we're all in it together.
Right. And I do believe that the leading back, you can't tell anyone you should do this, you shouldn't do that. That's taking their inventory, right? So, I mean, how do you lead then? And it's of course by example. So how can you do that unless you've already made your transformation, or you're on your journey? You can't.
And it breeds empathy too. Like when you have these experiences, then you can actually not only help the other person, but you understand how they feel. You've walked in their shoes, and like that is so powerful to me. If someone calls me and says, my son passed away or something like that, like I know how they feel. I've been there. I can help them. It's love, it's empathy, it's all these beautiful things that are birthed out of tragedy.
Right. Yeah, I know. And it's hard to tell someone who's stuck I had a friend the other day kind of stuck with, why is God doing, I'm getting so mad at God. God's letting this happen, and I said, no, that's not what's happening. we all have the choice here, and we are co-creating. There are things here that we can decide to do, and there's a free will, I believe, and a lot of sort of co-creation. So it might be easy to say, why did he do this to me, or she, or the universe do this to me? Why is this happening? And I anymore, I kind of just don't question that.
No,
Like,
because you'll never understand that mystery.
It's a mystery. Yeah.
You won't understand that. We're not able to really understand it, but what we can do is surrender to it.
Yeah. It doesn't even speak in my mind anymore of like, why. I don't really ask those questions to that. I don't question the universe's. I think I don't question anymore because through the years, over and over, and I sort of, there are years of sort of like, what is happening? I'm feeling it, right? Like, I know, like, there's probably some reason for all this, but what the fuck? There are some of those years.
I've had lots of what the fuck moments.
Like, whoa. But if you're really listening and you are co-creating, right? And I want to like point out the difference too between like, there's that whole, do I follow the flow and just go with the flow, or do I make decisions that are intentional, right? And I think it's like a little bit of both. I think it's a little bit of like, of both, right? Like you really tap into your intention and, follow that, right? And then make those intentional decisions to get you to the next step of wherever that is leading you, right? Like it's not magic. People are always like,
no, it's how we're built. It's how we're built. Those ideas, those intentions, that intuition, that's coming from the big picture and it's dropping into your mind. And if you can follow that, I believe it's leading you down the right path. I think you get in trouble when you turn that off and you don't listen to it and you're like, well, that doesn't make sense. Well, it's not supposed to make sense.
Exactly. Yeah. So, going back to the whole, like the what the fuck moments and then coming out of it, there's been enough times for me that I've experienced the, oh, now I get it, like, oh, now I understand why that happened.
And how did that process work for you? Like for me, losing my mom, it shattered me. That was the beginning of a new life. Okay. So it started with like, it brought me to my knees. I had never experienced anything like that. And then for me, I started meditating, and in one meditation, like the lights came on. I know that's unusual, but that was just my experience. But it really did start with extreme pain, surrender, and then a spiritual practice that just happened to fall in my lap. And then everything changed. So it was quick, but I'm curious for you, like, has there been like a real turning point in your life where all of a sudden you're going down a whole new road?
I wish. No, mine was more gradual in a way. Like, and also I'm from a family of questioning. So like growing up, there was a lot of just why we're questioning it, right? Like what's happening right now and how connected are you? That's, my mother would read us our horoscopes even in like when we were little. Like there were a lot of, I don't know it's not necessarily, I guess, spiritual, but energies, right? Like we believed in that and still do. And it's kind of like, we aren't just here solely for ourselves. Like that was always the thing. And breeding that empathy, as you were saying before, was so important now that I look at how we were raised. But talking about the world as, our neighbors are like everyone is one thing. So as far as the awakening, I think it was gradual. My spiritual journey, there were certain things I think that happened that were painful for sure, but I think a lot of it was probably more just what's the word I want to use? What is it when you're generational trauma. So even like generational trauma being like a woman, you know, you can kind of feel those things too. And you're conditioned in a way to act and be and like, you know, all those things and stripping all that away, even though I was never taught that's, you know, this is how you should be as a woman. You know, that generational trauma is like sort of, it's like that, my words aren't coming to me today, but cellular memory too, you know, those kinds of things,
Absolutely.
you know? And so kind of stripping all of that down. I had a couple really big breakups. I had I've had long relationships for my whole life since I was like 17. So I had a couple big ones where I was like, oh my gosh, like that's huge. And how did that happen? And
Mm-hmm.
why did that happen? And oh my gosh, that is painful as fuck, you know?
That's another way, like that'll break you. You know, if that feels like a death. And in a way
And
it is.
yeah, it is. And it is. And Adyashanti always says, like, when we break up with people or like, you know, someone dies, energy is dying. The energy between you is dying. We don't believe like energy dies necessarily, but like the energy between you is dying. So of course it's going to feel like you're dying because
Mm-hmm.
that energy is like wearing off, you know? So that, I mean, my grandmother passing away when I was in my 20s, like definitely a big deal. And, you know, a realization of like, again, a reminder of we aren't here forever. You know, some people say, oh, you don't have to think about it. Don't worry about it. It's going to be so far away. You don't need to think
But
about
you don't
it.
know
I'm like,
that. We don't know.
no, no. And
No.
it's just a blip, right? And my grandmother was so beautiful and such an amazing woman. And I thought to myself, God, there were so many things I feel like she needed to do before she left here. And maybe she didn't look at her life in that way. Or maybe she didn't, right? Like maybe it was her time and that was it. But yeah, so I don't know. There isn't like, I wish there was a sort of like, this thing happened and then my life kind of like changed.
Well, we're all different. And actually
Yeah,
what happened, how it has unfolded for you, I think is healthier and smoother. I mean, it can be very jarring when, you know, you're living your life and then everything radically changes in 20 minutes. You know, that took
yeah,
me years to figure out, well, who am I and what is this and what is happening? I mean, it didn't, all the years of schooling and reading and studying spirituality and religion and all that, that none of that prepared me for that
yeah,
experience. So when it
yeah,
happens gradually and you're just growing, to me, that feels better because it can be very shocking and it can break you in other ways. It doesn't
yeah.
have to be so intense is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, there were definitely traumatic moments in my life for sure, but yeah, nothing where like I thought, oh, this is how I should be living, and then all of a sudden I changed it. We were always so connected to like the ideas of the collective and the empathy and you know, we were really always kind of raised in that way. So
Do you think it's because you had like a really creative family? Because like I know
um,
my mom was super creative and that bred that type of thinking within our family.
maybe I think they're just rebellious. They're contrarian, you know.
That's good.
They're just, you know, they're just people who grew up in the 70s, you know. They are their families were the typical 50s family of like the dad who it's like the
Yes.
Mad Men style. So it's kind of like I think they're just, yes, they're creative in that way because they knew they did not want to raise their family in the same way that they were raised. And
Hmm.
not that it was, you know, totally everything was horrible, but they knew that there was a freedom that they wanted their children to experience. And for them that didn't, that I don't know, it comes as just a different way of thinking. They were you know, oppressed, that those children. So you know, when the revolution came for them, they were, you know, like this is how we're going to do it from now on.
And you and I and everybody, you are carrying that from your grandparents, your great grandparents, all that. I think there's a book out. It's called The Body Never Forgets. Is that the name?
Yes. Yes. I
And
don't know if it keeps the score.
Keeps the score.
Yeah.
I mean, when I read that, I was like, that is so 100% true. And to work through all of that, whether have a spiritual practice or you're going to therapy, I mean, that takes years and years because it's built into your system. And especially as women, it's like very hard to break out of that. The screen froze for a second. It's very hard to break out of that because it's like you're almost built to be a certain way. But like, I didn't want that for myself. I didn't see myself living in the suburbs with 2.5 kids. And like, I just didn't see that life for myself.
Yeah.
And
yeah. And I mean, it's just, it's the town, and you know, even certain professions. Like I remember being sort of like, this is what our family does, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then joining the design world, and there were so many other conditions there where I was like, this isn't right. Like I don't subscribe to that. Yoga world, same thing. Like here's these conditions that they want to place on you. So I kind of take what I know, like in my mind, I'm like, I know better, right? Like these are the things I'm taking from each.
That's right.
These other conditions and conditioning that, like, you know, groups and just groups want to kind of apply. Like I kind of just, I'm like, I'm good.
Yeah, no, that does not appeal to me whatsoever. I don't want someone else telling me how to think or how to live or how I'm going to do it. I need to have the experiences and then I decide for myself. Yeah. There is no group think for me. And it doesn't, I cross the bridge from that. That doesn't work for me to be told, well, this is how it is. Well, no, it's not how it is because I know how it is for me. And that's empowering to be able to live like that.
You know, I think everyone's different too, in that some people want to be told what to do.
Of course they do. That's why there's cults and, you know, all these big groups, because they feel more comfortable being told, like, this is how you should eat. This is how you should exercise. This is how you should live. I mean, to me, that would never happen. I can't even, I'm so far away from that it freaks me out. Actually, when I was in college, I was a religious studies major, and then what I wanted to do was be like a deprogrammer. So then I was going to go get a master's in psychology and like pull people out of cults, because I'm so against.
No way.
Yeah, I mean, that was my dream since I was like 12 years old. Because
that's so interesting.
I'm passionate about people thinking for themselves.
Yeah, that's so funny you say that. I'm like obsessed with any documentaries around cults too, because I'm obsessed with the idea that our minds are that pliable that we can fall into a situation like that. And I find it just fascinating to watch these people.
Well, and it's not, it doesn't mean you're not intelligent. It doesn't mean that, like, you know, something's wrong with you. It's you can be tricked in a way. If you're vulnerable, like, you know, cults usually grab kids when they first go away to college because they're alone. Mm-hmm. They're vulnerable. They don't have their families around them. Or like another way people fall into groups like this is because, you know, they had a tragedy in their life. They got divorced or someone died and they're really like not on their game. And then love bombing, there's, you know, all of a sudden they're part of something. And next thing you know, like, you're a robot. You're no longer thinking for yourself. And like years would go by. So to me, that's like fascinating.
Me too. I'm just like, what? Wow. How can they not see this kind of thing? And
because they can't. They're in it. They're in it. They're like, they got sucked into the vacuum and it's really hard to get out.
Yeah. And I think,
who are you without that?
Well, and that whole conversation is interesting too, about identifying with, right? Like those ideas of who we are, just concepts. I mean, deep down, right? Like that, I'm a designer, I'm this, I'm that, all those things. Those are concepts, right? Like
Absolutely.
those are things I do. I don't necessarily like identify with. So I think people who really identify with certain things, and they need that to sort of say, this is who I am, because maybe they don't know, necessarily who they are without
Right.
it.
And that's where the transformation sets in, because I am a banker. And then all of a sudden you lose all your money. Right. Then you hit rock bottom. Then you're like starting over. Here we go. And that's how it works. That idea of having this like false identity gets shattered. And then you got no choice but to look in the mirror at that point, because everything you thought you knew was wrong and it was bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an incredible, I mean, my whole next book is about this, because I'm fascinated with how this works.
Yeah.
Your screen.
Yeah. I mean, I love, oh yeah. I love the idea that like, we're starting to become more aware of these things, because we can get back to what we already know. We already know, right? Like these are things where I think it's like the forgetting your own divinity kind of thing, right? Like these conditioned patterns and identities and all these things society sort of places on us and that we grab onto is just, it's sort of like programming us, and we're just forgetting, right? We know.
We do. We come back home eventually, and then I tattooed "Child of God" on my arm, because like ultimately that's what we are. We're just children of this universe. We're all the same. We just we put these masks on, and we have this like identity. We all walk around like that, and it's just like a giant movie set.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I remember. Oh, I think, did I make this point already? But I did. I touched on it a second when I entered into the design world, right? And then, I grew up in an artist family, but the design world's a bit different in that it's a little bit more, there's a lot more ego, I think, involved in it. And having to then deprogram like my title, like, all those things you sort of like, oh, you earn in this world, and like just keep going back to like, it doesn't, it's okay, not having like a giant ego around how good you are in the field, right? Like, and making sure to kind of keep stripping that away. But it's tough sometimes, because when you are recognized for your work, or you're doing a good job and you're rewarded for it over and over, it's sort of like, how could you, it's hard. You have to keep really reminding yourself, like,
so how do you do that? How do you stay like humble and grounded and, stay in your body and be creative? I mean,
I love that too.
You started going the other direction. I can imagine that would take away the creativity of just being.
It does. It's soulless when you go in that direction, because you're sort of like doing it for the wrong reasons then, but it's juicy too. Like it's, your ego's like attaching onto it. So it's like, oh, give me that. It's just constantly kind of, I mean, I would say also reminding myself because of my own practices, but the universe does that for you. As soon as you kind of get to that top or whatever, there's a no that happens. Some sort of thing happens where you get told no, or something gets taken away, or, and it's like, oh, there's that reminder. Okay, I'm back. Like I'm not falling into that pattern. Now, sometimes people ignore that, I think, and they don't look at it as, oh, I'm going to take this and use it. And that's where we have the narcissists and Machiavellian people out there. But yeah, I think that the universe, if you're looking, it does it for you. And, if you've been told no enough, you know that, like, it's, if you've been told no enough, your ego's in check.
Right. But I mean,
know?
do you feel like, I don't know how it is in the design world. I only know how it is with books and this world. Do you feel like the majority of people around you want you to be a certain way and act a certain way and structure things a certain way? Or are you able to really hold your own, day after day? Or do you feel like there's outside forces that
Um,
weigh heavy on you?
Yeah, when I was working for other people, for sure, it was sort of like, be this, act this way, look like this. The Devil Wears Prada. It's that.
Right.
It's that. That movie, I rewatched it. It holds up. I'm like, oh my God, yeah, I get this. Because I had worked for corporations and worked my way up to director level, managing hundreds of people, things like that. But when you work for yourself, not necessarily, right? Like I was able to. My businesses, all of my businesses are centered around consciousness and reciprocity and giving back and all of the awareness and ecological sustainability, the thing that keep you very awake. If that stuff ever sneaks in, we remember what we're doing. It's serving. It's not necessarily for us.
Right.
My team members, if someone wants to dress a certain way or be a certain way or have colored hair, like whatever it is, I'm like, hell yeah, like do it. Like
Right.
that's our.
You're not trying to control them.
No, and I want them. I usually push them. Excuse me. I usually push them to challenge me. I push them. So I'll say, I know that's nice, but like, what do you think? I want to know what and I have a team member, Rachel, who's like very good at that. She will constantly be like, I'll question, are you sure? And she'll be like, I'm sure. Like she's very like,
But that's good. You want that. You don't want all like yes people around you, because then you're not growing either.
No, you end up the asshole who doesn't have any self-awareness.
That's right. That's right.
If you don't have it yourself and other people are telling you exactly what you want to hear, it doesn't bode well. So I never want to be that person. But yeah, I mean, I think the design world, there's so many conditions. And we're constantly evaluating things for how they look. So, that in and of itself is such a weird thing, right? So, and sort of an ego thing in some ways, but we look at it as like the beauty, right? Like in the purity, like how can we get to the sort of base level of some beautiful design and like really show its true nature, its authenticity, like we're not hiding behind anything, that's why everything's very simple.
Well, you can feel the energy and the purity in your design. I mean, every time I see something, it's not, yes, it's beautiful. And I love the simplicity, but I can feel the energy in it. Like, and that's coming from you and your group, and like when I wrote my first book, I was like, I don't want anyone touching this book that has not, done the work and has a different, like a higher level of consciousness working, because I knew the energy would just be in the product.
Totally.
It's not just creating, it's all the hands that touch it. It's all the energy, the thoughts about it, all of that. It comes alive.
Yes. And I think some people think, oh my God, it's so simple. It's so easy. I grew up as an oil painter. Like I have numerous paintings that are muddy and, haphazard. And, my grandfather, we had this exercise we would do because he was an artist, where he was like, do a continuous line and create something out of this continuous line. Because I had a habit of overworking everything, and it was haphazard. I was not being intentional about it. He was teaching me life lessons too, like let's be intentional about this. But so when people say, oh, it's simple, it's easy, it's I can do that kind of thing, I'm like, it's much harder than you think. It's sort of like, for me, a very big challenge to strip down and edit in that like very simple way, but still maintain the integrity of something like meaningful or something you can chew on, something that feels substantial. So it's like an interesting sort of transformation from going to, I want to use all this stuff to, let's strip it down. Let's
Yeah.
see what's.
And it's so, I mean, I love simplicity for that reason. You're just, what am I trying? You're just looking at the thing, the energy. That's it. It's not all this other noise around it, because you don't need that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, like you can see it, it's for what it is. It's kind of like we were talking about before about people, what who, what's
Who
all
are
this?
you?
I want to see what's behind that. Like,
Mhm.
give me all that, and it's very vulnerable to be in that state, and I embrace that so much now. I think years ago I was definitely afraid of being vulnerable, but my work, I was not. I probably made that trend. If you look at my art, I think it's a good indicator of like how I transformed as a human.
Mhm.
It's sort of like becomes more simple as the years go by and more vulnerable.
I love that.
Yeah. So, but
I
yeah, now I'm vulnerability. I'm like, give it to me. Like I'm not afraid. I've been crushed before. I've been sad. I've had things taken away from me. I've had many moments of long, times of not getting what I want, and so the
It's the
vulnerability,
hero's
like,
journey, just like we talked about.
absolutely.
It's the whole thing. Look at the kitty cat. It's
I
it's the whole thing, but that's the beauty in it too. Because really, when you look backwards and you start connecting all the dots, you're like, that is an incredible ride, even when it sucked.
Yeah, no, and it is. And I know, I mean, like for you, your mother passed away, your brother passed away. Like I'm going to have to go through those things. Like I know,
Yeah, but when
I'm
it happens to you, you might be in a different place, because I was not ready.
more,
I mean, yes, my brother, yes. My mom, no, I had none of this. I just
yeah,
didn't have any of this that we're talking about. And I've watched like 8 family members pass away since she's died. And the way I've handled their deaths is I'm a different person. I'm so
yeah,
much stronger. And it's from all those life experiences. You experienced it through things happening in your personal life and your work. But I mean, my God, obviously you've grown so much. So you'll be shocked at what you'll be able to handle, because like we talked about, there's going to be bad times. Like that doesn't stop. But
well, right. And we actually, I talked about this in my circle recently, like with some of my friends, about this time period being very, like, not shocking for me. This pandemic is scary, and I'm kind of like, okay, this is where we're at right now. But I said, this is why we practice.
right.
For
And
these
it makes you
moments.
resilient. You can
Yeah,
handle things.
for these moments, right? Like, and we
Mhm.
have it. Okay, so here's the tool set we practice every day. Like, I'm going to take this and this and this to be able to do this every day during this time, and
Do you
I
think
think,
your yoga practice helped you a lot with becoming strong like this?
I definitely would relate it to how I was raised, again, with the spiritual sort of like understanding of what's going on, and the intentionality behind every move, and the awakeness, right? Like trying to be very awake and notice what's happening.
Mhm.
Yoga for me, um, I don't 100%, even though I'm a certified teacher, I don't 100% prescribe to all of the practices in yoga. It can be very much like, there's a debate, right? Like, is it a religion? Is it not? And
Mhm.
for me, when I say spirituality, it's not religion, and
Mhm.
it's not conforming to these social sort of like, this is what you do in this group. So I would say some of yoga for sure, like, and mostly for me, it's the being quiet and moving my body to get
Mhm.
in my body. So it's not necessarily the practice, I don't know. I guess, the Palo Santo really grounds me. Those kinds of things, those rituals ground me to set up to move my body and get back into my body. Um, but when you think yoga teacher, you might think of a character necessarily of a person who's like very hippie and like just does, like I have this whole other side of design that's like sort of like very specific. It's not this other thing, right? So So yeah, I think that
It's grounded spirituality.
yeah, and it's not like hocus pocus, right?
Right.
Like
It's
I'm
no
not
mumbo jumbo going on
yeah, I'm
here.
not saying
Right.
that like some of those practices are great. But I do believe like I've studied, my mom was a bit of a theologian, so
Mhm.
like we know a lot about different religions as well. And like if we study yoga with the the Gita, like it's
Mhm.
their Bible, like
Right.
it's our Bible, right? Like it has the three characters, like the Father, Son, Holy Spirit in
Mhm.
Christianity. Like they're all doing the same
Of
thing. Like
course. It's all leading us to the same place.
yeah, and I don't necessarily. So I'm like, okay, got it. Like I get it. Like everyone's kind of doing that. So I kind of take certain things from different practices and use them, right? So or different methodologies and use them. With yoga, for sure, the thing that has helped is the moving my body. Like I have to do that every single day. Like there
So
is
it's
no
like cultivating a calm nervous system, moving your body, just like keeping you still
one.
inside.
Um, yes, and it can be even challenging. It can be very challenging to get inside if there's a lot going on.
Mhm.
Um, even moving my body like that, right? So I sometimes have to close my eyes during a whole practice. I'll
Mhm.
sometimes have to like, go really hard during a whole practice, like do an hour and a half, like 2 hours, to really get to be right here, right
Mhm.
now. And so yeah, those kinds of practices for sure have helped. Um, but sitting with my and of course sitting with my own thoughts and my feelings right after the practice, like I'll sit before and then I'll sit after,
Mhm.
to see if there's a transformation happening. And then also when I'm teaching, I combine art with it. So
Mhm.
doing coloring your feelings, kind of how am I feeling, like let me take inventory really quick before, and then let me take inventory after, how does this
Mhm.
look, and just doing a quick coloring exercise with that, because certain colors kind of evoke certain emotions, and there's a whole guide I go through. But that's from when we were kids. We used to do that when we were kids too, so
I mean, that is so built into who you are. And
yeah.
it's so cool to see you combining the two because I mean, I took some art therapy classes in grad school and like I thought they were so powerful. I'm a creative person, so to me I was like this is amazing and not expecting it, being shocked by it because I'd never done it before. And so
Yeah.
combining yoga and art, I like that. That feels like groovy to me. It feels good.
Yeah, I mean, I think art for me, like forever, was the thing to go to. I'm doing it now. It's like I'm very creative right now because it's a mechanism that I use to get grounded. And um, I understand that that's not the case for a lot of people, and that's okay. But for me, that was my safe place.
I love
Always.
that.
So I go to art, and I always want to try to kind of combine it with, let's share it with the world, and then how can we also help, on top of it, or because I'm creating art for yourself is great, it's
Mhm.
good, it's a good exercise to do, but what can we do with it so that people can enjoy it, appreciate it, and then potentially help them in some way.
And so you created these boxes that
Yeah, that's a good
tell me a
segue.
little bit about them because we're all stuck at home and I thought it was such a cool idea. So,
Thank you. They're called stay home kits. And basically what happened was Kitty O'Meara wrote a poem about staying home and healing. And I illustrated it, and it went viral. I think it's gotten like, my piece has gotten, I think, like a million um I want to say like story, like reposts and stories
mhm.
on Instagram, and then Oprah covered it too on her website. So I was like, this is like something that people are really, I was very connected to that
Mhm.
poem, and I felt like, gosh, and that's why I illustrated it too, and I felt like, oh wow, this is really resonating with people, and it's like raising this vibe. So I was like, okay, let's get everyone involved. How can I make this happen where people can have this to hang up? So it
Mhm.
started with the poem, and then I went to my creative partners, I have a big network around the world. So I feel like, and that's something I love about life, like this life, like I love being connected to many people and watching magic happen, because I, to do it in a bubble on your own is just like not, I've seen people try to do that. I've probably tried to do that myself. It's just not the way, it's not the way you make big kind of movements, it's more collective. So, reaching out to Bruno Rohner, who owns Rohner Letterpress in Chicago. His operation's closed, and I said, so what can we do? Can we letterpress this? And I used to work in Chicago, so like he's a longtime partner, 20 years. And he said, no one's on the floor, but I'll print it for you. And I said, what? Like you're not ever on the floor. Like I'm dying, like to have your hands touch this, because like I'm happy to, do it, because these boxes, in a nutshell, they have these just kind of essentials for staying home, but kind of more, it's not like toilet paper or anything like that, because there's none of that. Right. But it's like, little stationery and like this poem, and I'll go things raise the vibration, makes it a little bit easier. So, but they're real specialty. It's like something you can't get anywhere else. So, partnering with him,
printing that we'll link that in the show notes so people can order the boxes, because they're so cool.
Thank you. So having a poem, a 9x9 letterpress version, they're beautiful. They're printed on sustainable cotton paper by Cranes. And if you're in the paper or design world, that's like the highest end letterpress paper. So it's so beautiful. And they came out great. There's coffee from a specialty coffee roasting company, Big Leaf Coffee, who happens to be owned by my brother. So he is like a scientist and an artist all in one. So it's like perfection, all of he's a recovering perfectionist as well as I am. So, roasting everything to perfection, and, no chicory, like nothing is burnt. It's a dark roast. It is Sumatra, and it's organic fair trade. So again, their operations are closed, but they're going in to do these individually for us. And then we have a Little Corbeau's tea towel in there to match the poem, it's the Rainbow Roads tea towel from the Desert Dreams collection. And everyone really loved that design. And that was also, I applied that to the illustration that was on the poem. So they'll have something matching. That's organic cotton. And it's screen printed. Everything's made in the USA. Like, we wouldn't have been able to do it if my business was not based in the US. And then we have letterpress note cards by Austin Press. So Kim Austin, who's like just a soul sister. She's a sweet person in this world. She kind of just evokes this light. Her stationery is the stationery that I use, like for everything. And
which I love that you added that, because I love getting handwritten notes. Like,
right?
It's so exciting.
Yeah. And it's not like
forget them.
Right. And the greeting card industry is kind of like over, right? But this is I always explain this to people in a way of like, this is special. Like, these are the things it's on coaster stock. It's like a heavy weight. It has foil, like it says peace on earth, it's kind of a way to connect right now to people. Like, what do you want to say to people that you never said?
Right. I love that.
Right. And not in an email and a text, like, or like here is the written version of that. And it's not like the cheap greeting card. It's like this beautiful artisan, like she letterpresses these herself, black and white, of course, and you get a little pencil with it as well. Of course. Yeah. So and then Palo Santo from Peru. So I sourced this Palo Santo the last time I was in Peru, and if you guys don't know what that is, they're smudge sticks basically. Palo Santo is from a Palo Santo tree, and it literally means holy wood in Spanish. And you burn it. It has this beautiful smell, and it's wonderful smell. And it really, you can smudge your house with it. It really grounds you. It kind of grounds you. For me, Palo Santo is like my favorite smell. So
It's a perfect box for staying home.
yeah, right. And so we're going to be doing, we're going to be giving partial proceeds to Feed America and some other, we're kind of researching other ways to give back as well. For me, I don't make money off these. This is just for to give back to my partners, support my partners, raise awareness around staying home for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Like for the people in the back that don't know, like, hey, this thing is real.
Mm-hmm.
Time to stay home, right? And then we'll just be switching out the box and the curated selection every, few weeks. So we're just going to see how long this whole thing goes.
Well, I'm happy to promote it because I think it's such a cool idea.
Thank you. Yeah, it's definitely to get people to stay put.
Yeah, like we talked about, there's going to be a lot of growth from this, and staying home isn't like the end of the world,
No, I know. But it is for some people who haven't done it, right? Like they're used to going out every night. Like you and I are on our own a lot, right? Like we're business owners. Like we have our own, it's sort of like this thing. It's like you get to a certain point in your career or whatever it is. And it's kind of like, oh, here I am. Like, I'm the boss.
Sometimes I look at my calendar too, and I'm like, how did I make all these commitments? And like, why is something going on every single day and like every night? It's kind of nice not to have that for a little bit.
Yeah. I'm pretty guarded with my sort of like time in a way, because I want to make sure I have the those social things I need to do to stay balanced and everything, but the business is such a big part of my life. Mm-hmm. And sort of making sure it keeps moving like behind the scenes, because, moving this business, Little Core Boost is specifically what I'm talking about. It's, it's home goods that are organic, it's ecological, all the awareness is there. So it's like so important for me to do that. So, but, for some people who haven't sort of been with themselves at all ever, like say they've gone out every single night to eat and drink and, all of those things, like, and for the first time they're staying home, it's like hopefully, switch. Yeah. Hopefully.
I've done this already, like by choice.
Exactly.
I need to be alone and I need space to create. So when I'm writing, when I have a book going or something, it's like I check out. So I can do this, but I know it is really jarring for other people.
It can be, yeah. And so that was our effort with the partial efforts with the stay home kids too, but really to just like with the poem too, this is what is happening, right? And I can give you an image of that to put here, but like the poem talks about the transformation that we are talking about,
mm-hmm.
And that we're staying home to heal. So, really just raising awareness around that so that the terror and fear that people might be feeling right now is a little bit, lowered. And mm-hmm. we called it High Vibes. We called this first kit High Vibes because you might think of like high vibes as rainbows and like, oh my God, like crazy unicorns popping out of whatever, but it's not. High Vibes means, being in line with the positive vibration and, mm-hmm. Not identifying with the negative fear, all those things, but being in line with all those, like the light, right? Like all the
Amen.
Yeah.
That's what we need right now. So I wanted, and again, we'll link that in the show notes. So people can order those boxes. They'll love them. I mean, it's amazing. But I always ask my guests the same question at the end of the interview. What is something that you thought you knew for sure? Like you're like, I got this, but you were totally wrong. It was actually the opposite.
Oh my gosh, I know. I've been trying to think of this. For me, I would say like a consistent sort of lesson, because I don't necessarily think of things in terms of like wrong or right. Like I believe like, everything is here to help us. If I was sort of like, I didn't make the right call on something, it's like that was there to help me. But I have consistently, I like to project a little bit on people that they're in the same place in their spiritual journey that I am, right? Mm-hmm. So I forget sometimes that, oh my gosh, yeah, and I'm reminded quite often too, oh, they're not there, or they're over here, or oh my gosh. And I think that I had one really big one like that with someone a few years ago that I was like, and it was like, it's almost like the veil lifts and, the curtain lifts and you're like, oh my God, this is where you're at. Like, and it's dependent on like people living their own fantasies and like, in their own fantasies and whatever it is. And it can be tricky, right? So I had a really big one like that where I was like, oh, I thought you were here and you're actually here, but you did a good job
I love that.
it, right? Like you did a good job of faking it a little bit. So
That's a shocker.
yeah, it was shocking to like, but also, remembering like my conditioning probably says, look at people for like, take what they're saying as face value and kind of like, look at the good, right? And that's what my conditioning says. So, it really, for me to kind of see behind like what might actually be happening is very difficult for me sometimes. So
for all of us.
yeah, well, I think that, I think I can see, it depends on who it is, right?
Yeah, because some people are better at hiding that than others. And that's really like your intuition kicking in when you can see past that. And it can be very shocking sometimes.
It was on my Google Drive for a long time. It was, yeah. But yeah, no, something that I don't know. Like, what are the things that I was wrong about? I don't know. I mean, I'm sure I've been wrong about many things, but I also just don't think in those terms necessarily. So I don't know, like there wasn't a situation where I'm like, oh my God, this guy is actually blue and I thought it was green.
Well, no, like, when I was younger, I thought, oh, I'm going to go to college and then like, I'll probably own a restaurant and like, I'll probably get married and that's just like how it'll be. And I was totally like that. That was totally wrong. I wasn't going to go that direction, but I just thought that's the way it is. I'm in the restaurant business. I'm going to own restaurants and then I'm going to get married and then blah, blah, blah. And then, well, no, it didn't turn out like that at all.
Yeah, no, I would say, like in that regard, like how it turned out.
Or just like the way I was thinking, I really thought like, that's the way it is. Like, that's what you do. But
yeah, we question things so much that I never had like this is what is going to happen. I probably thought, I don't even know. Yeah. Like, even
that's good.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I feel like so weird saying, I was never wrong, but like, I don't think in that way necessarily, like it was all sort of there to kind of help me. But I also very much have this micro focus on, this is what there's this micro focus blended with you're making this decision for yourself, so you're gonna have to live with the outcome of it kind of thing. And so, being very intentional and focused around, which can not work all the time for like relationships and things, because I'm doing this like I'm like this train, right? Like I'm sure you can relate to this, but like and being really focused around that and seeing like these are the steps you take to get to that, right? And
taking personal responsibility for that. Like you're acknowledging, like I'm on this train, I'm driving it forward, and this is my focus, and this is what I'm going to do. With that comes sacrifice. So you got to accept that. It's one way or another. Like you can't have it all. It just doesn't work that way.
You can't. And I think people who say that you can, especially for women, it's just a joke.
No.
Like
I could not do all of this. No, I could not. I tell my girlfriends that have like 3 or 4 kids at home, I'm like, how are you like you even functioning right now? I'm not doing what I'm doing. Like, this is there, which is
yeah. I think anything that I haven't sort of, my life hasn't gone in that direction is because I have not either maybe identified with it, or I have not focused on going in that direction,
Right.
And it's kind of like that's the choice you're making. Long time ago, I might have thought, I'm going to get married at like, whatever age, or it's sort of this dream of like, what you see on TV, but like,
right. It gets in under your skin. Like when you're young,
yeah,
you think like, oh, that's what I'm going to do. But
sure.
you might
But then
not.
I was always just so contrarian around that too. Like, I need to establish myself, and I need to like make sure I'm an active member of society in some way that like can contribute. And like, I want to be able, like, if I ever have kids, like be able to like give them everything they deserve. So not financially, that's not what I mean, but spiritually and
Mhm.
soulfully. And you know, I would not want a child to be without those things, right? So it's not a haphazard. Our lives have been very just, we've been set up for what is the intention behind it, right?
Mhm.
And even so far as like, if you have a relationship, what is the intention there? Is it for your own personal gratification, or is it to have a partner, you know?
Right.
And you know, so
You are very, very wise. I'm
ah,
so
thanks.
happy I asked you to be on the show.
Thank you for having me so much.
Sure. Such great insights. Seriously. Like, I
Ah,
mean, I know you're my friend, but like, I haven't had a conversation like this with you. And it's been fantastic.
thank you
So
so much for
thank
having me.
you.
You're
Thanks.
welcome.
We will talk soon. Bye,
Okay.
everybody. I'll see you in a couple weeks on the next episode. Thank you. Thanks for joining me this week. If you're digging what I'm throwing down, subscribe, rate, and review this podcast on Apple Podcasts or your favorite listening app. I'll be back next Wednesday with a brand new episode featuring another killer conversation about how to start living a transformed life.